And you have to go way back before GLP-1s blew up before you see this incredible growth. But there's a ton of hesitation for companies who don't cover it to expand coverage. All the ones that currently cover it, I bet they're thinking, man, how do I undo this? And there's a stickiness factor. It's a hard bell to unring. Welcome to the Wellable Weekly Podcast, where we talk about key topics and trends at the intersection of well-being, technology, and HR. I'm Nick, along with my good friend and co-host, Geoff. Geoff, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Nick. Another wonderful summer day here.
Yeah, well, it's coming near the end of summer. It's August, so before you know it's September, and then you're in the fall, and then you're in the New England winters. Yeah, I know, right? I can't believe it's happening so quickly. So one article, and it's a topic that, again, I think we talked about not that long ago. We said, I'm shocked that we don't talk about it more frequently, and it's GLP-1s. And so we have a short clip on CNBC from the CEO of Bank of America, Brian Moynihan, talking about GLP-1s. He's they're interviewing whoever the co-host is or the host of the show, and it was all about the financial markets. And they have this one small little segment that they mentioned about GLP-1s and Bank of America employees. And we're pretty much going to talk about that exclusively. And effectively what he said was, he made a comment that was $250 million they spend a year on GLP-1s. And just for context, Bank of America has hundreds of thousands of employees, but spends about $2 billion a year on healthcare overall. So if you think about the rise of GLP-1s 4 or 5 years ago, that's near zero. So it goes from 0 to 250, which is an incredible amount of growth, unquestionably the biggest growth of any of their healthcare spend, and it makes up 1/8 of their healthcare spend today. And my guess is that number is increasing.
Yeah, I mean, the number jumps off the page, right? Because it's Bank of America, the size and scale of their organization, but it's not an outlier, right? To your point, I mean, this growth trajectory for GLP-1 spending has just been accelerated significantly over the past couple of years, and it kind of went from this niche drug that folks were starting to test out to basically being this wonder drug that is having widespread impacts on all parts of society. And I think there's some different estimates, but certainly north of 100 billion in GLP-1 spend overall in 2026 on GLP-1s. And it's probably the biggest contributor to where some estimates of overall pharma spending are going to eclipse 1 trillion this year for the first time. So certainly something that grabbed headlines, again, because of the number that's been publicly disclosed for Bank of America. But I think the question, and Brian Moynihan addresses this head on in the clip, is that he calls it a good investment, right? And so I think that's kind of the question that a lot of employers are grappling with is it truly a good investment? Is it a good investment for all companies? Is it a good investment for just certain organizations, given their size and scale around how long they retain employees and whether or not they're actually going to be able to see the benefits, the cost benefits of a really pricey drug to cover.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he said it's a good investment, but if you have to peel back the onion a little bit, the one thing I would mention is at one point, I think during the interview, he goes, we gate access to the drugs, right? So he recognizes the cost is huge, right? I do think he very explicitly said it was a good investment, but at the same time, he goes, we're not trying to give everyone this pharmaceutical, just open-ended, no strings attached. I think they didn't mention this in the interview, but I looked it up, and I think the gating process for Bank of America is health coaching. So to get covered or reimbursed for GLP-1 drugs, you have to go through some type of health coaching program. Presumably, you have to stay on that health coaching program. So it's not necessarily cheap. And I wonder if that $250 million includes the spend they have on health coaching and things. My guess is not. But that's an interesting thing. But at some point it's a good investment, but they do want to put a little bit of a barometer or a gating feature to make sure only serious people get it. And I think that's somewhat telling in some ways, right? And at the end of the day, he also mentions I think Andrew Ross Sorkin's a person interviewing him, and Andrew asked are some of the benefits ever going to accrue to you? And he makes the common sense answer of yeah, if someone's 40 years old and uses GLP-1s from 40 to 70, and the benefit we get is like in his 70s, odds are that person's like not going to be employed with you. And so he gave a response that I think everyone in the wellness industry often hears, which is like, but it's the right thing to do, right? Like, in the wellness program, like, oh, why do you care about your employees' health? It's really hard to measure ROI. You can go to a VOI framework, so value on investment framework. And even then that's maybe a little bit easier, but still very hard to prove. So why do companies do employee well-being? And it's really twofold, right? One, it's like the right thing to do. And I don't think they do just the right thing just for the sake of it. Doing the right thing often resonates in the market and leads to like better recruitment and like a better company perception and things like that. And we've seen countless surveys of like employees saying they would leave their current company to go to another company to get GLP-1 coverage. Like that is how important access to this drug is.
Right. I don't think the question of whether or not GLP-1s are effective is up for debate at this point, right? I mean, there probably some people who believe that everyone should be taking GLP-1s because there's probably some benefit that could be realized from them. The question that maybe should be explored a bit more is who's footing the bill for those, and is it in the best interest of the employer for a variety of reasons to be offering coverage for those drugs. To your point, there are going to be near-term advantages for employees who start taking GLP-1s. They may feel better day to day. They may, lose weight relatively quickly. And by keeping that weight off over a long period of time, they may be less likely to experience a cardiovascular event. That would, of course, be a difficult thing for them, but also, for their employer to have, kind of additional claims and, things that go along with that. So I think the kind of, contrarian view, if you're an employer trying to decide whether or not to invest in something like this, is to say, it's all well and good, but due to our turnover rate, like there's a limited chance that we're really going to be able to see a positive ROI if you're truly just measuring it in terms of, healthcare, the spend you have covering the drug versus the, cost you have for overall healthcare coverage. It's going to be very difficult to see a positive ROI on that if you're helping folks get onto a good trajectory now, but they're leaving your company and, during the years when they might be more likely to have some of these events, you're not necessarily seeing the payoff from that. At the same time, there is an immediate benefit, maybe a little more difficult to quantify, of just offering some form of coverage or some form of support. You mentioned it, Nick. I mean, the appeal of GLP-1 coverage is real. There's a few different articles. The one that I think we've talked about in the past, 2026 NFP U.S. Benefit Trends Report found that 29% of employees would switch employers to access GLP-1 benefits. So while there is certainly a cost headache or challenge there is a real talent attraction benefit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a third of employees. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Honestly, I can't think of, other than like salary, I can't think of another benefit that would get a third of employees willing to switch, right? Maybe remote work, but there's not many. The list is short, and GLP-1 is probably the only pharmaceutical drug on that list. And it's just kind of crazy. I mean, the one thing that's probably worth noting is like Bank of America may be unique, right? They may view it as a good investment. They're like really excited. They don't seem reluctant to want to spend more money. But like at the end of the day, like GLP-1 adoption by employers is kind of plateaued, right? Like it came out of the gate crazy hot. It was really, really popular. But like, I think this year, mid-year, like July, there's a survey and 36% of employers offer GLP-1 coverage, right? That's only up 2% from 34% in 2024, right? And I think it's pretty much flat from 2025. And you have to go way back before GLP-1s blew up before you see this incredible growth. But there's a ton of hesitation for companies who don't cover it to expand coverage. All the ones that currently cover it, I bet they're thinking, man, how do I undo this? And there's a stickiness factor. It's a hard bell to unring. And that's just like really challenging. I mean, for what it's worth, like more so than almost any other pharmaceutical, the direct to consumer market's like blowing up, right? Like in a way that maybe like, hair loss or like, sexual health or things like that have a big direct-to-consumer market. This is equally, the case, right? Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, all these companies are doing D2C offerings, and like that may be the solution where companies have a wellness program or have some type of gating, it could be health coaching, whatever it may be, that gives employees credit or subsidies to go out to the direct-to-consumer market and purchase the drugs on their own. And one good thing about direct-to-consumer drugs, they tend to drop in price, where like employer-only drugs tend to increase in price over time. And so as you get more scale from all the major manufacturers, a large competitive direct-to-consumer market, a push by many employers to like subsidize it and have the employee pursue it on their own directly with the pharmaceutical company, that may be the solution. And I don't know how that plays out in like these surveys. Like, does an employer consider themselves as covering the drug if they just give a subsidy or not? But either way, it feels like that has to be a path forward, especially if this is a good investment. If it's not, remains to be seen like what happens. The one thing I'll also note is like, I obviously don't follow a lot of pharmaceutical drugs, but like in general, I'm not sure if I've ever seen a pharmaceutical drug where all the news that hits the market is like always positive. Like when you have a new drug, there's always like new findings. Oh, it creates, it irritates your sleep, or you have like irregular this or that, all that type of stuff. You hear like, in the classic pharmaceutical advertisements, like the laundry list of potential symptoms that you may have. Everything you learn new about GLP-1s from my experience is like almost universally positive. Like I think like last week I read an article saying that they discovered that people on GLP-1 drugs like have a lower risk of cancer metastasizing if they have cancer. So it's like something random. You also hear a ton about social media use, which isn't great for your health. And like it's an addiction and people are using it less. People are smoking less. People are drinking less. Everything, all these like side benefits of GLP-1s have largely been positive. I do recognize it's been in the market, in the grand scheme of things, like relatively new, but it just seems all very positive, and it's positive in many cases in the short term. Like if you're, and that's not a reason to offer it, but if you're an employer and you don't gate Facebook and Instagram on your networks, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's like a portion of my employees using these social media applications, which if they are, they're not going to be very productive at the workday. GLP-1s could reduce that in a way that or maybe offsets or justifies the spend just from that alone.
It really earns that wonder drug moniker, right? I mean, you always kind of think back to that quote from one of the airline industry CEOs, right, about how just by folks being on GLP-1s and the lower weight in total on planes, you could save hundreds of millions of dollars on fuel for doing nothing. Just the fact that passengers are lighter on planes. So, I mean, you can see the impact on your average individual and something like that can just transcend employer only coverage into this consumer market, where that's probably your happy medium, right? Where sure, it's fantastic that some organizations like Bank of America will fully cover it, even with some caveats on engaging in a coaching program. But for your average employer, the D2C market just seems like it would be a more sustainable and measured approach, where yes, we know there are health benefits to GLP-1s. We want to support you in getting access to those. We will offer, $100 a month, $200 a month, rather than fully covering it outright. And that way employees have a little skin in the game as well, right? I think one of the things about GLP-1s is that while they're incredibly popular, they also have a pretty high drop-off rate. There's, I think it's a 12-week mark where you typically need to get to that point consistently taking the drug to start seeing meaningful weight loss. And more than 40% of people are stopping after like a month. So if you have employees who have some skin in the game, employers who are covering it to make it more accessible, maybe you add in some lifestyle-based programming, whether that's health coaching or other ways to be more mindful about the foods you're eating, because you're maybe you need more iron in your diet on something like this, or maybe you should be thinking about strength building because GLP-1s have been known to impact the way that you kind of build or maintain muscle. All of those things combined seems like a model that has legs for the longer term.
I mean, I love the United Airlines CEO comment, and like
Yeah.
the comment about make now, and then we can wrap it up here, is like, I'm not saying I advocate for this, but if you go out in like the public policy world, there is not a insignificant number of people who are public health policy individuals who are advocating that like the US government go out and buy everyone GLP-1s, like free of charge. The government's going to do it because there's so much for the society to gain, including the government, from that, right? Like you have the United Airlines CEO, like there's less fuel needed to transport people. That applies to cars and vehicles. So like our roads are less tested. I know it sounds crazy, but like you just think about all the cars and all the extra weight, and that's like less road maintenance. It's less dependence on foreign oil, right? Lower expenses and demands on our healthcare system, right? Probably lower alcoholism and like things that lead to like, adverse events from alcohol, like domestic violence and other types of violence and things like that, right? You can go down the list of these benefits, and like if you're, I don't have no idea how much it would cost, like 30 billion or 50 billion, whatever that number is, right? I mean, it has to be more than that. We're at 100 billion to spend, right? Now, okay, yeah. I'll adjust the math. If it's 100 billion to spend, I think what the latest number is 11% of adults have it. Let's say 100% of adults were going to have it, which is not necessarily the case. You're talking about $1 trillion, right? But how much could you extract from the benefits from that? It's very material, and like it's interesting enough to like hear that argument or have that debate, and that's just incredible to me. Like people don't, I don't think people understand that. Like we're in a world where AI like dominates the news cycle so much that that is like a revolutionary technology, and it is. But in any other world, GLP-1s would be the most transformational technology of the time, right? That's how crazy it is. And in many ways, I think there's a strong argument to be made that currently or in the near term, we will see more impact from GLP-1s than we will from AI. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it's like an easy argument to make, and it's something that has like some legs in the discussion.
And again, that just goes to show the impact of something that currently only 11% of people are taking. The number, I don't know what the latest stats on what percentage of people are using AI in day-to-day life, but it is much higher than 11%.
Everyone.
I would say at this point, whether they want to or not, everyone, right? The impact of something that still only like 1 in 10 people are actively using. It's those ripple effects, right, of how it can impact broader society. And here we are living through both. So what a world. But that seems like a good place as any to wrap up for today. So thanks again, as always, Nick, and appreciate all the listeners. You can always catch Wellable Weekly on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to the Wellable Weekly newsletter so you get some great insights there as well. Thank you.